Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada and with the support of Omnovos, Canada's digital customer engagement company. Omnovos makes personalization easy by helping you connect with your customers, connect with your data, and connect with your systems. Learn how at www.realcustomerengagement.com. On this episode, I catch up with Claire Santamaria, Vice President, Yorkdale Shopping Centre, and talk about how Canada's most productive shopping mall is dealing with the COVID-19 crisis and looking ahead to the busy holiday season, leveraging decades of experience and a strong team to help bring the year home. Next, live from New York, I interview a longtime friend, colleague, and retail industry veteran, Bill Bass, CMO at Full Beauty Brands. Bill shares lessons learned leading e-commerce at brands such as Sears.com and Land's End, the strategic moat of plus-size fashion, and invaluable insights into the state and future of e-commerce. First, let's check in with Claire from Yorkdale. Claire, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a real treat to speak with you again. I should welcome you back to the podcast. You and I had the chance to speak back in November at a Retail Council of Canada event. And, you know, we've known each other for a while. But again, great to speak with you. It's been such an interesting time, to say the least. Why don't we take one quick step back for those maybe who didn't have the chance to listen to our first interview. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, your role at Yorkdale.
Sure. So I'm the Vice President of Yorkdale, which really means that I lead the site team at Yorkdale. I have oversight for the shopping center, which has really grown into a prominent shopping destination within the country and certainly in North America. And from a sales productivity standpoint, or from a sales per square foot standpoint, we are the most productive shopping center in the country. And that comes from a lot of hard work and dedication from the teams that are here at Yorkdale. And that includes operations, marketing, the employee and tenant relations activities, guest services, and of course, we're supported and driven by our leasing efforts as well as our development team as well.
Now, my recollection was your direct staff is like 200 plus people, something around that range.
You're right. Yes, good memory.
And I think you said, like, I'm going to take another try. It was like 6,000 people, like not employers, but retailers. Like the community overall of Yorkdale is quite large when you put it all together, right?
It is. So Oxford has 200 employees here at Yorkdale. So you're absolutely right. And that includes our housekeeping and guest services and our security teams that, again, are here on site. We also have, you're right, a very large community of employees that support all the retail stores under our banners. So the 270 stores that we have do employ approximately 6,500 people. And of course, as you know, over the holidays, that would increase.
Now, I think you're being modest when you talk about top sales per square foot in Canada. It's actually one of the top ones for a shopping mall in all of North America. Unpack for us, for some of the listeners who may not know about Yorkdale. Just give me the overview of Yorkdale, what it is, and what makes it different, and how you approach. Merchants would say your assortment. You would say your mix of merchants. It's very, very finely, as in well curated. Take us through that a little bit for those who may not be familiar with Yorkdale.
So first, Yorkdale has approximately 18 million visitors a year that come through our doors. We have 270 stores, as I had mentioned, and we still really believe that we are all things to the community that is around us, the Greater Toronto area. We certainly have a vast trading area, which has really allowed us to be able to work with retailers that are interested in opening inside a new market. And so we really have worked hard to work with retailers that are looking to expand their business and their footprint within the Canadian market. And we've had a history long before myself and long before this shopping center is more than 50 years old and has always considered itself the home of flagship retail. And so as we grow that and as we've continued to hold to that, we really do pride ourselves in being home to first to market retail, first to market restaurants, and also being the flagship location for many of our brand names that we know very well in North America.
And for the listeners, it's good context, particularly if you're listening outside of Canada. Canada's been the destination for dozens and dozens and dozens of international brands in the past 36 months, many of whom have looked first, if not, and landed at Yorkdale. You got a whole number of firsts. So it really is, in my mind, one of those defining characteristics amongst other things. So let's go back to the before time, pre-COVID, if we can all remember that X number of weeks ago. And I like to start the conversation by understanding how you were thinking about growing the traffic, growing the interactions, doing good business at Yorkdale pre-COVID. And then where I'm going with this is, okay, now, we had the shockwave and sledgehammer of COVID hit everyone. What changed in terms of how you're managing that? It's probably a much longer conversation. But as you sat with your team and the end of 2019, you thought about 2020 and 2021. What were those things that you were going to focus on to really continue the success that Yorkdale was?
Well, that's a great question. And really, I think every business has had to pivot and really get themselves into the weeds of their business during this period of time. And we really have always prided ourselves in being an employee-first organization. And really, the health and safety of our employees really came to light. But when it came to our strategy, we actually didn't have to pivot that far. So when we were looking at the end of 2019, we really were talking about how we can work and partner with our retailers in a more intimate way, let's say, on how they run their e-commerce platform. And so that really became a driving force of everything from how we communicate with them and some changes that we made internally to launching new platforms at the end of 2019, and then how we were going to grow that side of our business with our retailers into 2020. So really working with our retailers on their e-commerce strategy was one. The second part was really taking a look at our sustainable initiatives and all those things that we can do to help reduce our carbon footprint in a facility of this size, taking a look at all the energy efficiencies that we could manage and change and pivot on, to launching new programs with our retailers. And there's a few that we did launch at the end of last year, including the banning of single-use plastic on straws. So we did make that change at the end of the year. So things like using really efficient processes in order to help manage even our, let's call it our infrastructure and sanitary storm water use, those kinds of things. So that became a focus. And then the other thing that we were working on very closely with, again, our partners was with traffic and wayfinding throughout the shopping center and around the surrounding building. And then the last piece, again, was building those relationships with those first-to-market retailers that were coming into the market, but also the ones that had launched with us, and again, helping and growing the marketing programs in around those businesses and celebrating them. So all those things, once COVID hit, which we'll get to, I'm sure, in a moment, but pre-COVID, that was really our strategy moving into 2020.
Well, yeah, and I want to get back to the whole e-commerce thing with some interesting work that you did on the curbside that I experienced myself. But take me back to March, April. I mean, these were such different times. So, what was going through your mind when, in the days of mid-March, you were thinking, I think we're actually going to have to close Yorkdale, which is, it's such a, I was off mic. I was going to say it must be so different because Yorkdale is just such a not 24/7, but it is a big, it is a big ecosystem, as you said, to stop and just, be closed it must have been such both an emotional shock and a shock to the system as you were working. But take me back to March and April. Walk me through what happened at Yorkdale.
We realized very quickly that we had to anchor our innovation in delivering a more personalized and personalized consumer experience. The closures also highlighted the importance of dining tenants in our center. And while retailers were closing, Our restaurants that remained open for takeout and delivery actually started to double down on their business. So the Cheesecake Factory, as an example, Chick-fil-A were really two brands that continued to thrive throughout the closure period. The takeout service, really, that's so common for restaurants, started to extend to our fashion retailers, which resulted in a really extensive range of our retailers offering curbside pickup at Yorkdale. And they were doing telephone orders and online fulfillment. And so we really decided to grow that in order to help support business that was already happening.
Is that something, getting back to, when you were commenting on, you had e-commerce already kind of at the forefront. Is that something you were contemplating and this accelerated it, or so you were able to turn pretty quickly because you were already kind of halfway there? Walk me through the curbside evolution.
So the curbside evolution came in phases, really, but ultimately what ended up happening was a curbside pickup was starting to happen with retailers individually. And again, this was outside of government regulation. So, when the government's legislated that we should close, that's exactly what happened. Stores that were doing fulfillment within their spaces continued to do so. So particularly athletic wear, they were already set up to do that. But of course, the volume of what they were doing was that much greater. For other retailers, once curbside pickup was allowed, they very quickly were able to pivot in order to help move the merchandise out of their locations. And so we had to pivot as well to be able to give some organization to the entrances that were being used by our guests. And so curbside pickup then was launched not just at Yorkdale, but at our other Oxford sites as well, to help customers and our tenants ease into this new model of working when their doors weren't open fully as yet. So it really did mean then that, this collaboration started to happen just for curbside. But one of the things that we had launched in 2019 was an e-commerce element called Search, Find, Shop Now. And it's designed to ensure that retailers' inventory and our shopping center appears at the top of search engines for specific items that highlight their availability at Yorkdale. So what this happened was, as you were searching, it injected Yorkdale specific inventory into your search page, the search phase of your retail journey. We really did have some strong participation from our retail partners, and of course that grew quite dramatically when COVID impacted this sector. So it allows us to be able to bridge that gap between the e-commerce and the bricks and mortar and support our retailers by putting that Yorkdale specific inventory into that online search phase. So that grew. Our style concierge and personal shopping, that private experience with our talented stylists, it really allowed our shoppers to choose custom selected fashions, but again, doing that in an abbreviated fashion. So we just had to be innovative with programs that we already had. And then the bonus was the retailers who decided to really embrace those platforms and embrace those services and work with us to help deliver an exceptional customer experience.
Now, I did a curbside pickup. It all went great. I found the location. I think there's 6 different locations from memory around the parking lot. I found the right location and I called them when I got there, and I had the item in the truck in minutes. It was fantastic. Does the curbside, as it happens, that retailer, which is Crate and Barrel, was on the outside, like they had an outside parking lot facing. Is it the case that retailers who do not have an outside facing presence are also doing curbside? How are you guys thinking about that?
Right. So if you were to make a purchase through a retail store that was on the interior of the shopping center, and you asked if you could do curbside pickup, what would happen was they would complete your purchase online or within the store or on the phone, and then they would arrange with you a pickup location. So they're all color coded. So say you were to make a purchase at a retailer on the inside, you complete your purchase, and they said, we'll meet you in section blue. Text us when you arrive and tell us what spot you're in, and we'll run out the product to you. So that's essentially how we manage that. So we color coded the different curbside pickup locations to give the retailers the flexibility to be able to manage that. Now, the other thing that can happen is the retailer might be operating out of blue section, but you end up in red. But it gives the retailer the option to say, stay where you are, don't worry, we'll find you and we'll come and give you your merchandise.
How are you thinking about it? And all that worked great when I went to pick, and it was a hard to find item too, so they couldn't even ship it to me online. So it was really a lifesaver, actually. There's a couple
That's great to hear.
How are you thinking about it? We're all talking about curbside in the spring and summer. How are you thinking about it for the colder winter months? Are you building some kind of structure, or what are you thinking about that? The kind of 12-month year-round type curbside service. Same thing, or any thoughts on that?
So I think we have an opportunity to do a few things. So one, it is absolutely to keep the locations marked as they are. But as our guests become more comfortable with wearing masks, so remember, this has been much of an evolution. Masks are now mandatory on the interior of the shopping center. There's better protocols in place with regards to social distancing. We now have our valet open where retailers can also invite their guests to go so that parcels can be dropped. So as an example, Holtz will use the valet area. So retailers themselves are becoming actually quite innovative in preparing themselves for the holiday season. So as that happens, we'll continue to work with them. But what we foresee happening is, an opportunity to do a little bit of both, a hybrid where maybe the guest has the item ready right from their car and it gets dropped into their trunk, or where retailer and customer meet at some point near the entrance, and then again the exchange of merchandise happens there. So there's lots of opportunity for us to think about that, but again, it would be supporting programs that our retailers already have in place.
And you touched on masks and social distancing and all the things we would expect. What's different about Yorkdale now than pre-COVID? So masks obviously is what, have you made any physical changes, and how are you thinking about, is there flow, and just describe some of the thinking about how you're going to run the shopping center, not just now, but it's as the season gets busy and more people want to go shopping. What are the things you've put in place that are going to help that?
So first, you are absolutely right. So we have a very high compliance of mask wearing guests. So the compliance on wearing a mask indoors is very close to 100%. And we feel in our market and with the guests that we have shopping in the shopping center, we are very fortunate that there is a very high civic responsibility when it comes to those that are entering our building. We also are giving masks if anyone doesn't have one or forgets. So mask wearing is the biggest change you see. There's lots of changes on the common area floor for those that are very familiar with Yorkdale. Seating areas have been reduced. Common area spaces have been widened. We've removed some of the landscaping in the common areas of the shopping center as well. Food and beverage areas have been reduced to accommodate the 50% capacity. So what we've done is actually opened additional eating areas in the shopping center in units within the shopping center, so that are in close proximity to the food court, as an example. And we've also opened some other spaces for retailers and employees to dine, because we know that their back rooms wouldn't be big enough for them to have employees working there and also taking their breaks.
Oh, that's smart. That's smart. Kind of making it a good home for as you said, the 6,500 other people in the community, right? Because everyone's facing that kind of space challenge.
Exactly. You've seen that there are some changes within our washrooms as well to make sure that, again, there isn't crowding in those areas. There's an increased security presence on the floor, as well as housekeeping presence, most importantly, in some of the cleaning protocols that we have in place. So we have an international certification, which we've exceeded, and we continue to do so through this COVID period. You'll see a fogger through the shopping center, and I'm not sure if that's the technical term, but it's a sanitation device that does actually help us in the common area, help to clean high touch point areas. You'll also see that retailers themselves have methods for keeping the numbers within their stores lower. So there may be small wait times, lineups, or waiting lists that you join before you enter some of your favorite stores.
Well, that's a good segue into, and by the way, in my mind, that one of the defining characteristics of my experience of Yorkdale is the kind of wide open space to begin with, right? It's not it is the opposite of feeling claustrophobic at Yorkdale, where you get nice wide common areas. So, I can imagine just making those even a bit wider really facilitates that interaction. Let's kind of last question. Let's talk about the upcoming holidays. Retailers are beyond back to school, which is probably going to run long this year, given when the startup is. But as retailers are turning their minds, and I'm sure you are as well, to Black Friday and Cyber Monday and the holidays, these big events that draw a lot of people. How are you thinking about managing that? I mean, in a typical holiday Black Friday promotional event, you've got longer hours, different hours. You've got there's lines were not uncommon, but now I guess the lines have got space of 6 feet between everyone, so one line kind of could bump into another. How are you guys all thinking through that? Because everyone's trying to figure this all out now and all at the same time. How do I have a great customer experience in the constraints of the COVID era?
So the great thing about the holiday period this year is there absolutely is this increased use and dependence on technology as consumers are planning their visits outside of their homes. And so our retail and our platform online will absolutely be geared to helping facilitate that. One of the other things and key learnings that we have now is the ability for us to be able to engage our stakeholders in helping us with the holiday programming. And we're already starting to do that now so that we get an understanding from our retailer base exactly what it is that they are looking for this holiday season. Will longer hours be possible, as an example? Perhaps we don't do extended hours for the entire month of December. Perhaps it's only on the weekends. So these are things that we're actually starting to work through now with really good data and really good feedback from our retailers. And we will land on something we think that will work quite nicely to provide that excellent guest experience that people are used to when coming to Yorkdale, and also helping to keep our employees safe and our retailers in business.
Yeah, it's such an important point, right? That last one is the COVID has hit retailers. Some have done actually okay to well with it, home-based. Others are really struggling. So I guess your biggest task is to kind of consolidate all that feedback and have a more or less uniform experience at the shopping center, but somehow be pliable enough to the individual ambitions or hopes or requirements of each individual retailer, or at least format retail. I imagine those are interesting meetings, right? All kinds of different requirements, and people are at different places heading into the fall.
Absolutely. But I think what we've seen now is a better collaboration and in participating in an innovative space with our retailers than we ever did before. I know even myself, for having worked in a shopping center, I'm aging myself, for more than 20 years. This is where you say, you don't look that old, Claire.
I was going to say, you must have started when you were in elementary school.
But really, this is, we are certainly, I've learned more about our retailer businesses than I ever had before. And I really do feel as though we're operating with a higher degree of trust and empathy in order to be able to move forward in a way that, again, really does protect some of the operating costs of our retailers. And that is something that we really need to be mindful of as we go into the holiday season. So you're right. It's a very delicate balance between ensuring a really great customer experience and then, again, managing the operational needs of our retailers.
Well, you've had a great career, and you're really at that pinnacle or intersection point of seeing so many different formats and seeing all the trends around the world. We're seeing, in my mind, Yorkdale is a world leader, and that's in no small part thanks to you and the team and the continued work. And the focus on the assortment, so to speak, or the mix of tenants. And, we're in for, we're not through this thing yet, but you've been operating since August or July. I've lost track. When did Ontario open up fully?
Actually,
I think it was
the end of June. We opened the end of June.
End of June, right? Mm-hmm. So we're all heading into the holidays. So thanks for sharing. It's great to have you on the podcast and share what's happening at Yorkdale, and really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's no doubt pretty busy, and I wish you continued success and wish us all well for the upcoming holiday season.
Thank you. We sincerely wish you well and to continue to be safe. And we look forward to catching up with you on your podcast.
Hi, this is Steve Dennis, and I'm here to tell you retail isn't dead, boring retail is. As a C-level executive at 2 Fortune 500 companies, keynote speaker, and strategic advisor to dozens of retail, consumer, and technology brands, I help organizations accelerate their growth. I'm also the author of the new best-selling book, Remarkable Retail: How to Win and Keep Customers in the Age of Digital Disruption. Join me and my co-host Michael LeBlanc, producer and host of the Voice of Retail podcast, as we use my 8 Essentials of Remarkable Retail framework to explore modern retail before, during, and after the COVID-19 crisis.
Each and every week, Steve and I, along with special guests including top retailers and industry thought leaders, will explore the latest events and work to understand the lessons of the past and present to craft strategies for the future.
So please join us each and every week for a lively and interactive journey to Remarkable Retail, debuting September 29th on Apple, Spotify, or any of the major platforms wherever you enjoy your podcasts today.
Bill, welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing very well. Thank you for inviting me, Michael.
I was thinking about the last time you and I saw each other, and it was out in front of a whiskey bar in New York City. And I was doing an interview, and you and David Bolotsky popped out with Mr. Schmaltz. I was interviewing him, and it was just fun to see you on the streets of New York. So
it was like a class reunion.
It was. Suddenly, we were all there at Scott Silverman's party for NRF. That's going to be different this year. I mean, NRF goes virtual, and I guess they're going to try and take a swing at it in the summer. Depending on how that goes. But listen, so that being said, we've known each other for literally decades. But for those of my listeners who don't know you and your vast history, tell us about your personal professional journey up to and including your role at Full Beauty Brands.
Yeah. So I grew up in Tennessee, down in the southern part of the United States, and joined the Army when I was 17. I wanted to pay my own way through college, and so I was an Army guy from very young ages, jumping out of airplanes, flying helicopters. But they sent me to college in New Jersey, and I was a classmate of Kate Delhagen, who I was looking at your podcast you just had on the last week. Yeah, just had her on. So yeah. Kate and I were classmates. It's funny, though, because we only had 1,000 people in our class, but I never knew her when we were in college. We both played sports. We both did all this stuff, but we just never intersected. But we ended up working together at Forrester Research. And so I got to know Kate very well. She's still a very good friend of mine, but I go back farther with Kate than probably anybody else in the industry.
Yeah. and your time in the Army, you became jump master and you're a pilot, helicopter pilot. So you quite accomplished, did a whole bunch of things, right? You weren't just.
I had fun. I figured if you're going to be in the Army, you might as well do Army stuff. And I got to do something. You certainly look like you took full advantage of the of the breadth of opportunities, jumping out of planes and flying helicopters. Yeah, I did. Although it came back to kind of bite me in the rear a little bit because my wife started wigging out about the stuff that I was doing, and my next assignment was going to be doing some special ops stuff. And my wife said, "You can be married or you can stay in the Army." And so I had that choice. So I decided to stay married. I missed the Army stuff that I did every day, but I'm glad I made the right choice. But so I got back out of the Army and went back to school and got a degree in business and a degree in education, and went to work in the newspaper industry. And I went to the Boston Globe to help them start up their internet business. So we launched
just like Kate, right? Kate wound up in the newspaper. Like
she was magazines. She went to Runner's World and did all of the because Kate was a big track star and basketball player in college, and then she was a triathlete. She was a professional triathlete, and so Kate went in the magazine business. I went in the newspaper business. So we both kind of came through the media world. Into e-commerce. And so we launched Boston.com, and that was 1995. And then from there, I went to Forrester Research, and then that's where Kate and I re-intersected. And Forrester was a blast at that time because this is the late 90s. And so Forrester, we're trying to help companies understand how technology is going to impact their business. And I would sit there and I'd tell companies, you need to do A, B, C. And they'd go, well, we, for various and sundry reasons, we don't think we want to do that. And I kept going, no, you really need to go do this. And then Lands' End called up one day and said, hey, how'd you like to come run landsend.com? And it was a chance to actually do ABC. What I've been, it's like, I want to eat my own cooking. I'm not just giving people advice. Right. I really believe that this is what's going to take to be successful. So I got to Lands' End in 1999 and had just a tremendous time at Lands' End. It was a wonderful company right at the forefront of e-commerce. We were, between us and JCPenney, we were the two largest e-commerce sites out there. And so that was really a very exciting time.
I remember those early days well. And in your education, I looked, and you've got a lot of education. In fact, you did something just even recently, right? You did some master's work even recently. So you're a busy fellow.
I've been lucky to go to school. The thing is, when you don't know anything, you can go to school and learn a lot. So that was a good thing for me. I recently went and got a degree in data science. I had the same feeling when the internet was first coming along, and I had a bunch. I'll never forget this. I was in the newspaper industry, and I was going to go work on the e-commerce side, and I had people telling me I was shooting my foot in the career because I could go be a publisher of a newspaper, and I was going, I think this internet thing is going to actually shake things up. And I had that same feeling about machine learning and all the stuff that's going on out there right now. And so I wanted to go back and really, really learn this. I was an English major in college, and so I'm not a computer guy. So I went and got a degree in data science, which is kind of a mix of applied math and computer science, and wrote neural networks, did scraping across the internet, and a whole bunch of stuff. But there's a lot of things happening with machine learning, understanding how customers behave and things like that. That's really, we're seeing the very beginnings of it right now, but it's going to be massive. The changes. I've
talked about on stages around the world these 5 transformational technologies, AI being one of them. And folks ask me, do you think AI is overhyped? And I said, actually, I think it is underhyped and underestimated its impact on all the other things like machine vision, like all these other robotics. It's just such power. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think a little bit like the internet. People would sit there and say, I think people overestimate the impact in the near term and underestimate the impact in the long term. Right. And I think the exact same thing's going to happen here. Just last week I saw news that an AI system just beat one of our fighter pilots in an F-16. Wow. And I know in the military there's a big shift going now towards you have drones and things like that, but the drones are still being run by people who humans. You're just operating them at a remote distance. Once you can have artificial intelligence in the drones themselves, then that includes both ships and aircraft. There's a lot of trade-offs we make in aircraft to make sure that pilots survive. That if you don't have pilots, if you don't have a biological organism on board, it frees up a whole lot of design things. And the same things happen in, warehouses. When you start, and Amazon's pushed this a lot, trying to put robotics into warehouses. There's just this is going to be big.
Well, and it's all great, and then there's Skynet and Judgment Day to talk about. So
there's the scary parts too.
Until it's all great until Judgment Day. Let's get back to that. All right, so you did that, and Sears. You did just such an accomplished career. Tell me about Full Beauty. What's that? What are you doing there?
Yeah, so Full Beauty is interesting. We're a collection. We have 8 brands. We're catalog and internet. We don't have any retail stores, which, man, thank God, once March hit, it was like, hey, we don't have to worry about the store. What a nightmare. I'd hated to have to manage our team through something like the store closings. And we focus on plus size apparel. We have one men's brand called King Size, and then we have a number of women's apparel brands, the largest of which is Woman Within, and we all focus on size 12 and up. So that's our area of focus. As you get into the larger sizes, fit changes in how you come up with clothes that are stylish that still fit well at larger sizes is kind of one of those differentiators that's hard for companies that design and manufacture clothes for non-plus sizes. It's just very difficult for them to scale into plus size. It really is kind of a unique expertise, and that's our focus.
You manufacture it all as private label or captured brands, or do you have are there brands in your portfolio? How do you go to market? Yeah,
so it depends on the individual brand in the portfolio. Is a primary, I don't know, 80%. I'll say 80%. I don't know if that's the exact right number, but that's magnitudinally correct. 80% would be our label, our own stuff that we design and then have manufacture. We contract out the manufacturing, but we also carry national brands in our men's business. There are more national brands in our men's business, but we'll carry national brands to round out the portfolio.
And I've seen licensed brands in full in the swimwear category as well. Do you have any of those? I've seen those.
Yeah, so we actually have we have a swimsuits brand called Swimsuits for All that has had a long relationship with Ashley Graham, who's a plus size supermodel. So we carry Ashley Graham's swimsuits. We carry some other people's swimsuits. So we have a very large swimsuit business. That's just this is the end of the summer right now, so that business is starting to wind down. But that had a very successful summer after having really when the COVID hit, everybody stopped traveling and swimsuit sales dried up. So they went through this kind of period in the wilderness, and then their sales just exploded really kind of around late June.
As you think about what I call the before time, pre-COVID, and actually you and I were communicating back in the fall about some other stuff, and I was thinking of your business. Tell me about the business as you were thinking of growing it or expanding it, the strategies behind it. As this, portfolio of banners, what white space did you find? Did you find that, in general, that the plus size market was underserved, and is that what excited you about the opportunity? And how did you, you're not? I wonder if you were thinking about opening stores, but you're clearly catalog and internet. Is that how you saw 2020 and 2021 moving ahead pre-COVID?
Yeah, so I'd worked in the plus size space before. So from 2009 to 2012, I'd worked at Charming Shops. We owned Lane Bryant, Catherine's, and Fashion Bug. So we had 2,000 retail stores. So that was a very store heavy business. So we had 2,000 retail stores, again, all focused on plus size. And that's where I've always found it good to go after niche markets, because you can develop the level of expertise, and it's hard for people to compete with you there. Right. And so, it's the old Warren Buffett, kind of a moat. You want to have a moat. It's easier to defend the castle if you have a moat.
Even do you say, I'm familiar with the plus size market. I was with the Shopping Channel which is, for the Americans listening, is like the QVC of Canada. And we had a wide range of styles and fits. And you're right that it is an art and science to make that fit work, and that comes from practice. That's just not something you can roll off the factory floor, right? There's, as you said, there's a bit of a moat around that, both from a marketing and from a fit perspective. Yeah,
both from a fit, even manufacturing. I mean, when you start making 6XL, there's just a lot of extra fabric that's being sewn, and if you're the sewing operators aren't used to it, it's not It really is a unique skill set to be able to handle that much fabric and have it, go through the machinery smoothly. And some of it requires special machinery. So there's there's definitely things in the plus size market. And so when I looked at Full Beauty was coming out of bankruptcy. I kind of, for my day jobs, when I come into these things, they're kind of companies that have kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. And so we come in to kind of get them fixed up. Plus size market was appealing. The other thing that was appealing to me was the collection of brands. And the collection of brands, we first started this when we were at Charming Shops building universal carts where you have all your brands all being shopped across that go into one cart. So if you think about a mall, we have, specialty stores kind of lined up next to each other, but it's in opposed to going into a mall where you go and you check out of each individual store. Here you go in and you take your shopping cart with you. So you go shop all these things and go find whatever you want and check out once. That has been a hugely powerful way of driving new traffic to your site that is essentially free. Once you've built the universal cart, so you get the fixed cost of building the universal cart, but your marginal cost for getting a customer to try one of your brands goes to zero after that. And so as a way of driving low-cost customer acquisition, universal cart's the greatest thing ever. And so
it's so interesting to me because I think page back in the memory, I think Sears did that with Land's End, and I did that with Hudson's Bay, where we had 4 or 5 banners. We didn't or weren't able to get the universal cart, but we did link them together with things like common credit cards, and then we cross-pollinated or cross-promoted. I mean, and some days I found, it was a bit of a challenge because it was difficult to establish the brand identity. I mean, in my case, it was a mass merchant department store, so they were a bit of fish and fowl, so to speak. Whereas yours all seemed to be the portfolio of similarly aligned businesses, right? So maybe
universal cart's a lot easier if you have kind of a natural cross shopping between the brands. A customer come in and would naturally shop across these brands. Yeah, we did that when we were at Sears and Land's End, but like you, it wasn't a true universal cart. It was really just kind of a link to the other, because tying on the IT side, tying these things into one system, especially when you're dealing with legacy systems from companies you've gone out and bought, is it's a significant emotional experience for your IT team.
To say the least. But it's interesting because you have swimwear separate as opposed to integrating it within the different lines, or do you have it also within the lines? I'm just poking around a little bit on the merchandising strategy.
So that's an interesting question. So swimwear for us right now is a little bit unique in that that was an acquisition that we made, and literally day before or whatever, last Thursday. So just a couple of days ago, we just took the swimsuit brand and put it up on our systems. So they just got integrated in, and so we have some of the swimsuits that are sold within the catalog brands, Women Within, and things like that. We have all the swimsuits are carried within Swimsuits for All. So we'd like to double list things. We try not to make it hard for customers to find things, right? So if you're looking for swimwear, we don't want to say you have to go to the swimwear business to buy swimwear. We want to make it so that you can buy it wherever you are. So, and that's a design philosophy for us. We do that same with clearance items. There's a lot of companies that say we don't want to pollute our full price items with clearance stuff. Our philosophy is people are going to buy clearance. People are going to buy full price. The more places that you make it easy for the customer to buy, the more you're going to sell.
Yeah, I fought that battle and won too. Like I used to call it positive redundancies. Like I liked having an outlet section right in the main store, not some kind of other site, because as you say, some people look for deals and other times they're looking for full price. Let them figure that out. Have you thought about, or is it in the plan or is it not in the plan, the kind of thinking around a joint loyalty program or joint credit card, something that then stitch these brands together at a transactional level beyond the cart?
Yep, and we've already done that. So all of our private label credit cards you can use across all the brands, which makes it a very powerful thing. When we went to the universal cart, we made it so that all the loyalty stuff, gift cards, all the rest of that can be used across all the brands. And that really makes it much more powerful.
Yeah. Is it one credit card brand or is it a brand per? I remember we had the one credit card and we ran out of space in the back to put all the banner logos. which we struggled with a little bit sometimes.
And so we have individual brands have their own credit cards, plus we have a full beauty credit card because some of the brands are too small to kind of justify their own credit cards. Right. We've looked at going to a single card across the thing, but what we find is many of our customers will have multiple cards from our brands, and that's better for us. It gives them more open to buy for the customers if they have these. So we've always found that having multiple options of credit card brands, so we have a One Within card, we have a Romans card, we have a king size card. By having each brand have its own card, that ends up being better for the customer. Let's
talk about now this whole COVID thing. You didn't have stores, so you were able to not to have to deal with all that, but you did have, of course, warehouses and infrastructure and people. What was your experience from the start of the pandemic, and how are you thinking? I guess where I'm going with it is if you compare what you were thinking about the business and how to move it forward in 2019 to how you're thinking about it today, knowing what you now know and seeing what you now have seen, what in your mind and the team's mind has changed about how you will market or the merchandising or just how you're going to deal with the brands.
Yeah. So we're in 3 locations, with roughly a third of our employees at each location, which is kind of interesting. So we're in New York City. Our distribution center, so we have a lot of hourly distribution center workers in Indianapolis. And then our call center is in El Paso, Texas. And COVID hit different parts of the country at different times and at different levels, right? So New York City, we were ground zero. Initial blast hit us right there in a fairly major way. And New York City went into a lockdown, right? So everybody had to go home and work from home right from the beginning in New York City. There was a lot of question about how effective that would be and whether people would be able to, we use Microsoft Teams, but could you do the video conferencing? Would that work from home? One of the things that I found interesting is that talk about forced adoption of technology. I mean, this was a forced adoption of technology, and I don't think people are going to go back. I mean, it is interesting. We made a step function change. We leapt to a new plateau in the use of video conferencing, and I think people are very comfortable with that now. And that were
you skeptical? Were you I know I talked to some leaders who, and I've worked for some who were not fans at all of having employees work at home. I was mostly because it for some it just made them more efficient, and it depends on the individual. But were you on either side of the fence on that, or what were you thinking?
So I've seen both ways. I would sit there and say, as a general rule for our company executives, that skepticism would have been the right term. I have a company that does on my own on the side that does data science that's spread around the world, and they're only remote, right? I mean, by definition, we got individual contributors kind of spread around, and they do great. I have a group of moving companies again on the side on my own, and we put our call center people working from home, and we saw a marked decline in productivity from our work from home thing there. So it really, I don't think it's as binary as it works or it doesn't work. I think it
depends.
It depends. Yep.
Yeah.
Where it does work, man, it's great. It really does. But and then you got things like that doesn't work in the distribution center, right? So you still had to get people coming in. So we went through all this, all of the standard, taking people's temperature, making sure that they were spaced out correctly and all that. But, that's one that you got to be physically there moving boxes. You can't do that remotely.
This great acceleration that we've been talking about, I've been talking about around the adoption of online shopping and just as you described, the adoption of home work and all these things. You've been at the forefront of retail for many, many years. And are you perceiving a permanent shift in the way consumers shop and behave? Are we overstating this moment? In other words, we pulled this big circuit breaker on consumer behavior. In other words, now everybody do something completely different. is it going to last, though? Are people going to just migrate back, regress to the mean, so to speak, migrate back to the way they were? What's your thought? Have we moved forward irrevocably, or is this just a notional change in time in terms of consumer behavior?
Yeah, move forward irrevocably. It's now there's some, when you look at some of the adoption of stuff like grocery was very underpenetrated in e-commerce, right? And I think that there is going to grocery could end up sliding back a little bit, because I still think people like to go into the grocery store and actually pick their own fruits and vegetables and things like that. But I do think that I don't think it slides all the way back to where it was. And then there are other ones. We know for a fact that because our business has been up a lot, and it's always fun when you're sitting in these meetings and you're trying to figure out, okay, how much of this is because we're smart and we've made really good decisions, and how much of this is just the environment that's you try not to be too egocentric and say, hey, it's all because we're great. There are people that have only shopped stores in the past that are now have to shop online, and since they've shopped online, I don't think they're going to go back to shopping only in stores. Now, I don't think that they stay just online. So there'll be some retrenchment back from where we are, but we're not going all the way back to where it was before. There's no way that's going to happen. As
I think about this structural change and your category's fashion, I think about the infrastructure that it takes to get products to and fro, because I love looking at things like reverse logistics, right? Returns, which were just a huge factor when I was at the shopping center. Right?
Yeah, we don't like returns. Returns are bad.
Returns are bad. We would fight tooth and nail for a 1% reduction in returns, right? For everything from attaching a permanent label that's like the size of a 8.5 by 11 page on a dress, so people wouldn't wear it out to an evening, and the dress rental program kind of cracked down on that kind of stuff. But as I think of that, just what you said, let's call them inexperienced.com shoppers who, might be buying 3 or 4 of the same size just to get an idea of fit, and they're returning the rest, increases in just the system that it takes to get all these products to all these homes across America and Canada. I see it really stressed right now. Suddenly there's a big influx, and that's not going to turn around. Do you see all these things coming together as perhaps a scenario where the rapid increase will be its own enemy for the industry? And is there some stresses that you can see coming for that?
Yeah, there are definitely near-term stresses. Every shipper, every online retailer, no matter who you are, is having some very uncomfortable discussions with UPS or FedEx or whoever it is, it's the DHL, whoever it is doing your shipping, because they're getting hammered, and they're passing those costs on to the retailers, and retail's a low margin business, right? So you can't absorb a whole bunch of these costs. So that's causing a lot of stress right now across the industry.
Or they're making more mistakes. My own personal anecdote is I had a nice new iMac ship all the way from China via UPS, and you can fun watching it go to Anchorage and all these places, and then they dropped it off on the wrong doorstep, and now it's lost.
Oh,
and they don't know where it is, and I'm like, not my problem, so to speak. That's your problem. But it just got me thinking about. Yeah, we're just busy. We're so busy. These mistakes and these costs start to add up. Anyway, just one of those anecdotes, but it just illustrates, I think, a broader issue as you're describing.
And it's going to be, it's going to be rough here for the next, definitely through this holiday season. Because they're having to, we were talking about our distribution center and having to socially distance in the distribution center. Well, they're having to do that at FedEx. They're having to do that at UPS in their systems, right? And so, this is going to be a rocky fall, rocky winter. But I think by next year, capacity starts to catch back up. Amazon, I think, continues to expand. I think everybody's now wishing Amazon had started their delivery service better, because it would have given us at least one other competitor in the that's right. in the mix. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Prime Day now so close to Black Friday, right? Like they haven't had their Prime Day yet, which is worrying a lot of us in terms of just system capacity in advance of big promotional
periods, right?
No, that's a very good, yes, you're right. That's what makes business fun though, right? It's because it's never the same, right? You always got something out there that's kind of interesting. And it will be, I mean, this is going to be a little bit painful rolling through this. But I think as we roll out the other end, I think as you get into next year, the systems are built to react to the stimulus, right? And so they'll start to expand. They don't want to over-expand, but they will definitely expand out. And I think by next year, most of this will be fairly well resolved. So short-term pain, I don't think it's one of those, does it kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs? That's not going to happen.
Right. Doesn't get in the way of the overall trajectory of the growth for the category or the format, right? Okay,
not at all.
On. Well, let's talk about what's next for Full Beauty and you. I mean, what's next is what's happening now. It's a funny question. Sometimes when I ask it, I'm like there's not enough going on. But as back to thinking about growing the business, as you said, it's a turnaround. Is there anything changed in your mind, or is it just adapting and maybe getting a bit of a tailwind actually with what's happened with people, doing staycations or just investing in their apparel, or how are you thinking about the future?
Yeah, so it's we've had a really significant growth, and part of it's driven by the changes that we made coming in to turn around the company. Part of it's driven by COVID. It's made inventory planning extremely exciting. We're trying to figure out, how much should we order for Q1 of 2021, and you're like, wow, what's going to happen? Just like you were talking about, what's going to happen to the distribution systems in the holiday. So there's a lot of unknowns kind of floating around out there, but things that we have seen, and this was pre-COVID and post-COVID, as we got the universal card up, the network effect of people cross-shopping has been huge. For some of our brands, the cross-shopping, so people that show up on one brand and then go buy from their brand is over 50% of their sales.
Wow. That's amazing. That's like pure incremental sales.
Pure incremental. It is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Now, the smaller brands benefit disproportionately, right? So it's the smaller brands that are getting over 50% of their sales from traffic that's generated from the bigger brands. But the smaller brands also send an equal amount of traffic back to the bigger brands. It's just on a percentage basis of a bigger brand. Right. It's a smaller amount. And so the amount of cross brand traffic going back and forth, we're going to have to figure out the way our systems are set up. If we send out a catalog to send you to a Woman Within catalog, you then go to the Woman Within website and you don't buy anything, but then you click over to the Roman site and you do buy something. Our systems right now aren't set up to credit that catalog with that downstream Roman sale. So that
you got a big attribution riddle going on behind the scenes.
That's exactly right. And so we're under circulating catalogs. No doubt in my mind about that, because we're not allocating all the revenue to the catalogs as they're coming in because of this cross brand shopping. So that's part of my data science team trying to get in and figure that out. But the power of the network is so good that now we're out looking at there's a lot of companies out there that are on the market because they weren't lucky. They had stores, or they were already in a rocky position before this happened. And so we're actively looking at trying to add more brands to the portfolio, either ones that we create or ones that we can go and acquire.
Bill, you're so busy doing a whole bunch of great stuff. Thanks so much for making time. I really appreciate catching up and talking with you about this stuff. Such a great discussion and such a varied and interesting background in leadership. So once again, thanks for being on The Voice of Retail. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, Michael, I enjoyed being on here, and I always learn something talking with you. So I always look forward to that.
Well, thanks to Claire and Bill for being my guests, and Omnovus for the support of this episode. If you like this podcast, please subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform, rate and review, and be sure and recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of LeBlanc Company Inc., and you can learn more about me on www.leblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Until next time, have a safe week.